I need advice right away. I got myself into a huge mess. P.S. I dated his friend. He now wants to divorce. I am in a huge mess as a result of my stupidity and desire for new experiences. I had no idea he'd find out about my abomination. He would actually like to end our union. I adore him, and I don't see myself marrying another man, but only him. What I did was ungodly and disgusting. But why would the consequences or karma affect only me? Why am I the only one suffering when I was not alone in this whole situation? I know I'm the one who is married, and I should have honored the vows I made in front of the Lord and our guests, particularly our families. It was so evil of me to violate my vows and commit adultery while married. But this doesn't change the fact that I wasn't the only one doing the sinister. I dated his friend, so if he wants to end things with me, he should also end things with his friends. But life is never fair in terms of women's rights. All male friendships have codes, right? I believe they call it a bro code. A code in which you agreed not to date or enter into an intimate relationship with your friends, partner, or sibling. The guy I cheated with had broken the code, but nothing happened to him while I suffered the consequences of our actions. I really need help with this one. I'm confused, but I also want to work on my marriage with my husband. So, my husband. Tony Mala, 35, and I. Female 33. We met at a mutual friend's wedding. More like at my cousin's wedding. He was friends with my cousin's husband. We were seated at the same table. He was and still is a very attractive, clean, and sophisticated gentleman. I recall wearing a very long dress the day we met, which tripped me and nearly caused me to fall. Imagine falling in front of everyone in the hall. It would have been such a disappointment and embarrassment. Tony luckily caught me before I tripped because I was trying to stand and he was sitting next to me. His touch gave me goosebumps I didn't realize I had. Not to mention his gentle hands. It felt so good when they touched me. Even his gentle gesture was unusual. My feelings for Tony were what I call love at first sight. He didn't try too hard or say much, but his gentleness and handsomeness drew me in. Throughout the day, we talked and laughed. It was great to be with him. He was in good company. He made me forget about everything else. It felt like nothing existed except for him and me. I even forgot we were attending my cousin's wedding. I had met a friend and a lover there. I thought I'd found the one my soul required. He was an answer to my prayers. Gentle, a big dreamer, and a successful man who aspired to be even more successful than he was. I adore a man who knows exactly what he wants and goes to any length to get it. Mind you, at the time, I had plans to open my own internet cafe and coffee shop. Using Tony's knowledge and skills, I knew I'd acquired resources to help me launch a successful internet cafe. It seemed to be a blessing in disguise, you know. With Tony by my side, I felt confident that I would have everything under control and that the project would be a success. Since then, we've become friends. He taught me a lot about IT that I didn't know. I wanted to open an internet cafe because we didn't have one in Sicily. Only in large cities, far from where I was staying. So I wanted to help my community gain easy access to the internet without having to travel to the big city. I created it specifically for students so that they can easily access the internet and find information for school projects without having to spend more money traveling to the big city. Tony helped me start the internet cafe, which was very kind and generous of him. I was grateful for the service that he had provided. He started as a computer tutor, and every minute I spent with him was priceless. I'm still melted by his touch and voice. It was the kind of thing that made you feel like you'd been given some voodoo, or that he used voodoo to make my heart race. Months later, Tony declared his love for me after I had already felt something for him, and I was falling hard for him. But I couldn't tell him that I was protecting my heart from rejection, as well as my ego and pride. He expresses gratitude for the opportunity to trust him with my community, children, and students, as well as how much he enjoys spending time with me. Tony wasn't from Sicily, but he had come for the wedding, which was the first time we had met. Tony and I dated for 2 years. Before we married, we were still getting to know each other really well. It was the best option, and it gave us the opportunity to learn more about each other. I was pleased that Tony was not rushing into marriage. Yes, we were committed to one another. About 1.5 years later, he posed the most important question. My feelings for him kept growing. I'm not sure if I'd be obsessed with Tony, but I can't live without him. Even if he wasn't with her, we weren't talking on the phone or texting, I would suspect he was up to no good. You know, when you call your partner and his phone keeps putting you on hold or going to voicemail at the same time. I felt insecure, and I didn't want any woman to see Tony's side. He was mine and mine only. Tony lived in Agrigento, on Sicily's southern coast, and I lived in Piazza Marina, about an hour and a half away. So he'd go home for a week and then come to see me whenever he was free, or I'd travel to his city when I wasn't busy. Our love was like a flower. It blossomed with each minute we spent together or communicating. Months later, after 2 years of dating, we got married on our dating anniversary. You know, it's very pleasant and fulfilling. Spending the rest of your life with your favorite person who also happens to be your partner. We were able to share all of our flaws, dreams, futures, and plans. After getting married, we moved to Falu to start our own family. We were living our dream, and I couldn't be happier. Why wouldn't you be happy if you were given the opportunity to spend the rest of your life with someone you fell in love with on the first day you met him? I fell in love with Tony on the first day we met. Deep down, I knew he was my soulmate and caregiver. He didn't have to work hard to make me happy and feel whole. He knew how to make me feel better on dull days. He always knew how to make me smile. But, you know, if I was asked why I cheated or dated his friend, I'm not sure how I'd respond because I don't have an answer. Anyway, time has passed. Tony became too busy to spend time with me. Yes, the intimate moments were still fine, but I needed his attention and desired to spend more time with him. I mean, we had been apart for nearly 2 years while still dating. We'd spent a few times together since our wedding. We'd go out to eat or play games. My relationship or marriage with Tony was wonderful because we would always allow ourselves to be young again by playing games, going on ice cream dates, and attending exhibitions together. We were stress-free and carefree. It was as if we were in our own dimension, living by our own rules. So, on a sunny Saturday, Tony left the house to buy meat. He had asked me to prepare something because his friends were coming over to celebrate another friend's arrival in Italy. I had heard that he lived in Los Angeles, LA, but had now moved to this side. So I prepared everything, and Tony's other friends began arriving with their partners. Of course, everyone had a good time until the man of the day arrived. You know, when someone says, "I feel as if I am looking at Jesus himself," that was how I felt. His body structure, neatly trimmed mustache, and sexy hazel blue eyes. I was surprised by the guy. He was extremely handsome. You know, the handsome Leonardo DiCaprio. That's how he looked. However, his eyes appeared naughty. And I enjoy being naughty. The guy did not attend my wedding with Tony. I'd heard he was working because he was a doctor. The man was introduced as Bradley Mully 33. His appearance was both charming and breathtaking. You know, when you see someone for the first time and instantly feel drawn to them. That's how I felt about Bradley. I wasn't drawn to him solely for his physical attractiveness. But sometimes I imagined myself having an intimate relationship with him. I imagined myself and him riding and grinding against each other. My imagination ran wild, and I imagined him exploring my entire body with his pinkish sexy lips, kissing every fiber of my being. I knew it was wrong of me to drool and fantasize about my husband's friend, but I couldn't help it. The guy was everything and more. I wanted or craved only one night with him. Then it would have been sufficient for me. I'm a witch and a loose cannon. I understand. But how was I supposed to stop thinking about the pool guy? Mind you, he was going to be staying with us for a while until he found his own place to stay. So imagine the torture and pressure I'd be experiencing. I know it's sinister to have these thoughts about your husband's friend, but I couldn't help myself. Only one night with him would solve everything. As much as I adore my handsome, intelligent husband, Bradley was the kind of guy you could only have a crush on and date because he was so extreme. His handsomeness and the way he spoke would make any woman drop her panties for him. 1 week later, we were still staying with Bradley, and I spent the majority of my time with him in the house. He's a very cool guy, carefree, talkative, and funny. He easily adjusted to his new surroundings, and things were going well for him. I'd seen him work out a few times in the morning. His abs were something else. I felt like I was going to touch them. I had a lot of dirty farts for the pool guy, and I really wanted to stop thinking that way about my husband's friend. During that week, I remember being in the kitchen making breakfast for both myself and him. He entered wearing only a very tight vest and jogging shorts. He simply stayed with me in the kitchen, keeping me company. Only if he knew his company was a distraction for me. He began asking me about my relationship or marriage with Tony. Curious as to how things were going, I told him what he needed to hear and decided it was enough to share. I couldn't tell him all about my marriage. Yes, he was my husband's friend, but I couldn't tell him everything that happened between Tony and me. Mind you, Tony and I had been arguing a lot about his constant absence, even when his friend was present. That resulted in a very heated and lengthy argument. My husband and I were gradually drifting apart. Yes, our connection and love would always be present, but we were growing apart. I felt as if he was attempting to push me away because, even when under stress and pressure, he no longer confides in me as his wife. I wondered who he confided in if he was shutting me out like this. It was extremely painful for me to have to beg my partner to give me the attention I require every day. The more I spent time with Bradley, the closer we became. I ended up telling him about Tony's behavior because it shocked me. I wasn't sure who to talk to. Bradley was the only person who was willing to listen to my complaints about my marriage. I know I shouldn't have done that, but I had to because I couldn't keep my sadness and heartbreaking moments inside my chest. Otherwise, I'd burst and destroy everything. So Bradley made snacks for us, particularly marshmallows and hot chocolate, which were my favorites when I wasn't feeling well or down. Bradley had given me time and space to vent, and I appreciated it. I needed to unload. My chest felt too heavy as I cried like that. Bradley hugged me and promised that he would speak with Tony. Tony had become so distant, particularly after our argument, that he began going to work early in the morning and returning late at night. Bradley's hug was exactly what I needed. You know, the warm, welcoming hug that makes you feel like everything will be fine. So, while we were still hugging, I kissed him. We kissed, and things got out of control. A kiss escalated. We ended up performing the deed in the lounge. Mind you, I had forgotten that Tony had recently installed CCTV cameras in the house. I'd completely forgotten about that. Bradley had been unaware of it since that indescribable day. Bradley and I continued to see each other. We would sometimes get intimate in my marital home, and other times we would go to the nearest hotel to book a day's stay. We couldn't book for the night because my husband would be suspicious. We did our work carefully because we both knew that if Tony found us, we would face the consequences, and I would be left as a divorced woman. Bradley was giving it to me so sweetly and gently. He was extremely explosive. He knew how to explore a woman's body, make her feel foreign, and then speak in tongues. He knew exactly where to touch me to make me submit to his commands, and he enjoyed gentle, rough, intimate moments. I had no idea that there were gentle, rough types of intimate sessions. Bradley taught me a lot, including some new positions that others might consider extreme. But they are very enjoyable and pleasant. I was not a submissive wife to my husband, but with Bradley, I was submissive without hesitation. My husband cherished missionary intimacy, whereas Bradley enjoyed exploring new opportunities. And I learned a lot. My own husband, for example, was only interested in 1 or 2 rounds. Then he would become tired and fall asleep. Bradley, however, was a dragon. In terms of intimacy, he was on fire. He would keep you awake all night and wake you up in the morning. He always left my private area burned and exhausted. The guy knew what he was doing, and I used to compliment him until today. He's the best. My relationship with Bradley lasted approximately 9 months. We were still cautious, but Bradley did not want us to remain private. He wanted us to be seen in public as dating couples, and that was not what I had desired. As much as I enjoyed the intimacy and everything Bradley had to offer, but I adored my husband so much. I would not abandon my husband for an intimacy freak like Bradley. He is treating me well and exploring my body in the way I had desired. But I would not divorce my husband just to be with him. He didn't realize that our relationship was strictly intimate, nothing more or less. However, the poor guy had cart feelings, which was not what we had agreed upon. It was purely and completely intimate. Weeks later, I ended my affair with Bradley. I felt as if I had destroyed my marriage and violated my wedding vows. I shouldn't have let temptations and desires control me like that. I should have respected myself and my marriage to Tony. Bradley had begun to develop feelings, and it was not looking good because we would occasionally argue about his obsessive behavior. I'm not sure why he became obsessed, because we had an agreement with no strings attached, but he decided to attach strings to our thing, and the whole thing was crushed. I returned to my marital home. I want to relocate and buy a new home for Tony and myself because the house held so many memories, including the memory of me committing adultery for the first time in my married home. I felt like I had disrespected my husband in the worst possible way, and there was no way to undo it. I knew I'd wanted or craved Bradley for at least one night, but it shouldn't have escalated to this point. So, guess what happened? I was C. A few days later, Tony returned home, having spent the majority of his time working from home. The guilt was consuming me like a deadly disease. I tried to be normal around my husband, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew something was wrong. I couldn't stand looking at him and pretending to be a happy wife while knowing what I'd done. Tony, as nonchalant as ever, did not appear to notice anything amiss. The guilt and anxiety over my abomination grew with each passing day. The following week, it was Monday afternoon. I was watering the garden when our family lawyer arrived at the house. I couldn't understand why Hamilton, our lawyer, had come to our house. I knew he wouldn't come unless it was important or urgent. So I started experiencing palpitations. My thoughts drifted to Tony. I assumed something had happened to him. I could not bear the thought of being a widow. My mind was busy transporting me to places I did not want to see myself in. Hamilton asked to speak with me and informed me that it was critical. I knew he wouldn't leave his spacious and fancy office to come to my house unless it was necessary. So we went inside, and he handed me an envelope. He informed me that he was sent by Tony and that I should read everything thoroughly before signing. He also told me that I was free to fight and save whatever was lost after signing. However, he did not think fighting would be a good idea. He spoke in riddles. I became conscious and eventually opened the envelope. When I opened the envelope, I could not believe what I saw. My heart felt like it had been stepped on by an elephant, and my body had been hit by a truck. I was lost in words. I told Hamilton that I was not going to let Tony divorce me without a fight, and that I would not sign the divorce papers. I wasn't sure why. Tony would like to divorce me. That time, the abomination I had committed did not even cross my mind. I kept trying to solve the puzzles, wondering why Tony would suddenly want to divorce me. A few days later, Tony and I were in the magistrate's office with both of our attorneys. I couldn't simply let him take everything away from me. I was asked to explain why I did not want to sign the divorce papers. I told them that I couldn't let Tony, my husband, leave me without explaining why he woke up and decided he wanted to divorce me and take our home. And I couldn't just allow him to break my heart like that. When it was Tony's turn to speak or defend himself, he used the most hurtful words to me. He insulted me and said he would regret marrying me if he knew I was a witch. He didn't even look my way the day we met. He was furious to see that even the temple veins were bursting. He appeared murderous. And he was not the Tony I had been married to. He then dropped a massive bomb on me, which I had long forgotten about. He told me he was aware of my affair with Bradley, his friend, and that I had been seen going to the hotel with Bradley while he was at work. I could not believe how he obtained the information. He told me that he had been acting normal and fine, but he knew everything I had done. So he doesn't want anything to do with me, and I should go back home and continue running my internet cafe and coffee shop. I denied every allegation he made against me. I even denied having a relationship with Bradley while I was fighting, screaming, and kicking. Tony gave Hamilton a USB drive, and there it was, all of the evidence of my abomination. I didn't know what to say, and I had no way back. I did not even know how to defend myself. It was very humiliating and embarrassing. I tried to apologize to Tony, but he refused to hear anything from me. I had no choice but to follow his request. I went back home and signed the paperwork. My heart was shutting down. Even now, when I think about everything, my heart breaks. I miss Tony so much, and I regret everything I've done. What should I do to get my husband back? I can't let him leave like that. I appreciate each and every one of you who listened to the story today. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Additionally, please leave a comment below reflecting on what happened. Please do not hesitate to contact me if you have a story to tell about your own or another person's situation. Take care.